Hey guys, tonight we begin with the yummy, ancient Roman fast food from famous panis, libum, globuli to gustum, lagana, patina, and many more. Let your mind drift backward, not just a few years or even a few centuries. Drift back 2,000 years, past the cobbled roads of modern cities, past the roar of engines and the glow of neon signs. Drift back to a place where the sounds of sandals echo off stone alleys, where the hiss of roasting meat mingles with the voices of vendors calling out their wares. You have arrived in ancient Rome, at the height of its imperial glory, and you are hungry. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I am doing here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is for you now? It's always incredible to see who's joining us from across the world. So now dim the lights and close your fan so that you enjoy this episode fully. Ready? Let's begin. Rome was, in many ways, the beating heart of the ancient world. By the time of the early empire, let's say the 1st century AD, the city boasted a population well over 1 million souls. That figure is staggering even today, but what it meant then was complexity, noise, crowding, and above all, food logistics. The average Roman lived in an insula, a tall, fire-prone apartment block built quickly and cheaply to accommodate the city's swelling masses. These multi-story structures housed hundreds, sometimes thousands, of individuals in cramped units. Cooking indoors was not only dangerous, but often illegal due to fire risk. So where did Romans eat? They turned, in great numbers, to thermopolia, the ancient world's answer to fast food. Thermopolia were the fast food joints of Rome. The word itself comes from Greek, thermos for hot and polio for to sell. Quite literally, they sold hot food to passers-by, and there were thousands of them in Rome alone. Imagine walking down a narrow Roman alley. On your left, a stuccoed wall broken by an open storefront. Inside, a stone counter built chest-high runs in an L shape. Embedded into this counter are large dolia, wide, sunken terracotta jars. Some hold stews kept warm with coals beneath. Others cradle cool offerings like olives, cheese, or wine. Behind the counter, a vendor, perhaps a freedman, maybe a slave, ladles out meals to customers with practiced ease. The atmosphere is lively. The smells, spiced lentils, pork fat, garum, a salty fermented fish sauce, mix with the dust of the street. Patrons eat standing or find a quiet spot to sit nearby using fingers or small wooden spoons. Fast food, Roman style. The contents of a thermopolium varied depending on location, clientele, and time of day. The poor could get a simple bowl of pulse, a thick porridge made from spelt or barley, sometimes flavored with herbs or a splash of garum. Those with a few extra sestertii might order panis, Roman bread, often flat, round, and stamped with the baker's mark. Sometimes dipped in olive oil, honey, or wine. Or perhaps lenticular, lentil stew, rich and hearty, flavored with onions, coriander, or lovage. Cicer et lomentum, chickpeas seasoned with vinegar and herbs. Sausages, grilled and sliced, often served hot from a brazier. Saltfish, cheap, salty and filling, sometimes grilled or added to soups. Garum-laced stew, the ubiquitous fermented fish sauce, found its way into nearly everything, lending Roman cuisine its uniquely pungent umami profile. For dessert or a light snack, one might grab dates stuffed with nuts and dipped in honey, sweet fritters dusted with poppy seeds, fruit soaked in wine. And to drink? The Romans had no shortage of beverages. The common man might drink posca, a sour concoction of water and vinegar. Wine, of course, flowed freely, but it was always watered down, sometimes spiced with herbs or steeped with seawater for flavor. Eating at a thermopolium was not just a necessity, it was a ritual, a moment of community. Men argued politics while sipping wine. Laborers took a break from lifting stones or hauling amphorae. Lovers might meet in secret, tucked into a shadowy corner with a shared bowl between them. The elite sometimes sneered at the practice. The moralists wrote disapprovingly of eating in public. Seneca called it shameful. But even the wealthy couldn't resist a snack on the go now and then. In Pompeii alone, archaeologists have uncovered over 150 thermopolia, a staggering figure given the city's small size. One famously preserved by volcanic ash still bears painted menus and frescoes of food, ducks, jars of wine, and even a dog on a leash, perhaps a reminder to mind one's manners. As day fades and the shadows stretch long over Rome's 7 hills, the thermopolia slowly shutter their wooden doors. The fires die down, the jars are emptied or covered for the next day. In the dim alleys, the last stragglers take their final bites. Somewhere, a drunk citizen hums a song by the light of a flickering oil lamp clutching a half-eaten sausage. The city never fully sleeps, of course, but it softens. Quiet return. And so in the rhythm of Roman life, the fast food stall has done its part, nourishing not just the stomach, but the city itself. As you rest now, imagine that simple Roman meal, the warmth of the stew in your hands, the salty scent of olives, the hum of voices and clink of cups, the soft steps of sandals on the stone street. Drift gently through the marble shadows of ancient Rome and sleep. The city is still dark, but the baker has been awake for hours before the stars have faded from the Roman sky in a dusty back alley behind the Subura or near the Aventine Hill. A small team of bakers rises in silence. Their day begins not with sound, but with weight. The heavy bags of wheat flour, the long-handled wooden paddles, the heaving of dough as it's kneaded by strong, practiced hands. Rome, by the 1st century, was home to hundreds of pistrina, or bakeries. These were more than small shops, they were public institutions. Inside, one might hear the rhythmic squeak of millstones powered by donkeys, turning grain into coarse flour. Slaves or hired laborers tended the ovens, their backs damp with sweat before sunrise. Bread, panis, was the cornerstone of the Roman diet. It came in many forms: round, stamped loaves for market sale, long flatbreads meant for dipping into oil or garum, and even military rations baked for long journeys. Public bakeries were often state-supported, part of the annona, Rome's grain, dole system. The poor received free or subsidized loaves, ensuring that the empire's hungry were never too far from sustenance. As the sun climbs behind the hills, the scent of freshly baked bread drifts through the narrow lanes. A boy carries a warm loaf home wrapped in cloth. A soldier breaks off a crust before morning duties. The baker, whose work is nearly done, watches the quiet hunger of the city begin to stir. The sun is high now, and so are the voices. You walk beneath a marble arch. The smell of basil, fresh garlic, and dusty lentils greets you. Welcome to the Forum Holitorium, the produce market of ancient Rome. It is not grand like the Forum Romanum. There are no senators here, only sellers and buyers and the buzz of ordinary life. The stalls are wooden and simple, sometimes just cloths on stone slabs. Vendors, women and men alike, arrange pyramids of onions, beans, chickpeas, dried fruits, and leafy greens. There are rare imports too: dates from Africa, lemons from Hispania, apples from Gaul. The Roman appetite is vast and curious. There is a slow rhythm to the market, the clink of coin, the low murmur of bartering, the buzz of bees drawn to honeycombs sold in small ceramic jars. Every corner holds a story: a farmer's pride in a perfect melon, an old woman bargaining for lentils, a street child stealing a fig when no one looks. Here, food is not fast but fresh. It's a moment of connection between countryside and city, between soil and soul. By noon, the stalls begin to empty. The leftovers are fed to animals or taken home. The Forum Holitorium sleeps, but it will wake again tomorrow. The air is dry and your throat is parched. Step now into the world of Roman drink. Wine was everywhere, but rarely as we know it. It was diluted, often flavored with seawater, honey, herbs, or even ashes. This was no indulgence, it was necessity. Plain water was often unsafe, and so wine became the people's purifier. But water had its place. The aqueducts, marvels of Roman engineering, carried clean water for miles. They fed Rome's countless Nymphia and Lacus, public fountains carved into walls and courtyards. Here, a slave might fill an amphora, a girl might wash her hands, a soldier might splash his face. And then there was posca, a drink of vinegar, and water, sometimes mixed with herbs. Soldiers drank it. Laborers drank it. It was the taste of the Roman working man, sour, sharp, cleansing. You pass a small taberna vinaria, a wine bar, its shelves lined with amphorae. A man pours you a cup of mulsum, wine sweetened with honey. It is warm from the sun, around you, laughter. A flute plays softly in the street beyond, and with each sip, the city seems just a little softer. The meal is done, but the appetite lingers. Even in ancient Rome, the craving for something sweet was universal. There was no sugar, not yet, but there was honey, the golden prize of the countryside. Bees were kept in woven skeps, their honey-flavored cakes, wine, sauces, even meat. Street vendors sold dulcia, sweet snacks on clay trays, fritters fried, in oil dusted with sesame, dates stuffed with almonds and dipped in honey, pears poached in wine and sprinkled with black pepper, a curious contrast of taste and texture. Wealthier homes made elaborate desserts, honeyed nuts, layered pastries, and cheeses with dried fruit. But the ordinary Roman might simply chew a piece of dried fig or a bite of candied apple. And in this world of salt and sour, of oil and grain, that small sweetness was something to be savoured, slowly, carefully, perhaps shared between friends. In the shade of a fig tree, meat was a luxury, but not out of reach. Follow the sound of cleavers. Near the Tiber's edge, the Macellum, Rome's meat and fish market, buzzes with noise and scent. There are sides of pork, hung on iron hooks, chickens in cages, fish packed in seaweed and salt. The vendors call out prices in loud voices, their aprons stained with blood and brine. Rome was a pork-loving city. Sausages were grilled fresh at stalls. Offal, liver, tripe and tongue was fried in olive oil and wrapped in leaves. Meat scraps, sometimes too tough or old to roast, were boiled into thick soups sold by the bowl. Fish was more accessible, dried, salted and sold in slabs or stewed in garum and herbs. Shellfish markets buzzed at dawn. Even the poor could afford a bit of smoked eel or sardine paste spread on bread. The market smells rich and earthy. Smoke, fat, salt, and above it all, the laughter of butchers, Rome's quiet kings of the kitchen. The work is over, the water settles, and the hunger rises. You enter a Fullonica, a Roman laundry. It smells of lye, urine, and wet wool. Workers scrub tunics with their feet in large vats, singing old songs. It's hard, foul-smelling work, but it pays. And at the end of the day, there's food. In a nearby courtyard, a cook ladles lentil stew into bowls. The ingredients are simple: onions, legumes, oil, herbs. A chunk of bread is passed around, a few olives, a fig if you're lucky. Someone has brought posca. The workers gather, eating with wooden spoons, wiping mouths with cloth. There is silence and then laughter. Someone tells a story about a patrician's toga. Someone else hums. The sun lowers, casting long shadows through the stone courtyard. It is not a feast, but it is enough. More than enough. And then the world paused. In 79 AD, the volcano came. Mount Vesuvius erupted and swallowed Pompeii in ash and time. But before it did, it preserved a world. And among that world, its kitchens. Walk the streets of Pompeii. You see them, counters with dolia still intact, painted frescoes of food, a duck, a rooster, a jar of wine. These were the menus, the advertising, the artwork of appetite. One thermopolium, only recently excavated, still shows the vivid orange and black of its painted counter. It served duck, pig, goat, beans, wine, even sea urchins. The jars still hold traces of oil, of ground fava beans, of ash from the last fire that ever cooked there. And in that silence, beneath the dust, you can still feel the heat of a meal once served, the echo of a spoon against a bowl, a final sip of wine, and then stillness. But through that stillness, history whispers. In the courtyard of a modest home on the Esquiline Hill, a woman leans over a small charcoal brazier. It is nearly time for cena, the Roman evening meal, and she stirs a pot of barley, slowly thickening with water and herbs. A child plucks mint from a pot nearby, while a neighbor passes by carrying a basket of leeks and garlic wrapped in old linen. Dinner in Rome was rarely extravagant for most. While the upper classes reclined in triclinium chambers on embroidered couches, the average citizen sat cross-legged or stood beside friends, sharing stews, bread, and leftovers from earlier in the day. Lentils, onions, cheese, and chickpeas made frequent appearances. Sometimes a salted herring or a drizzle of garum transformed a plain bowl into something rich and savory. Across the alley, oil lamps are being lit. They flicker against the stucco, walls casting warm shadows as the scent of herbs and smoke lingers in the summer air. It is not a feast, but a comfort. Something warm, something shared, something known. In a shaded grove beyond the city walls, travelers pause for rest. They sit beneath a tree older than any living man, the bark scratched with names and prayers. One unrolls a cloth bundle, coarse bread, a wedge of hard cheese, a cluster of dried grapes. Another pulls out a clay flask, uncorks it, and passes it around. It holds diluted wine tinged with rosemary. These are meals eaten slowly, with few words. Perhaps one of them hums a tune, something from childhood, something remembered from a distant village now forgotten by the maps. Birds rustle in the branches above. An insect skims the surface of a nearby stream. Such food is neither hot nor fresh. It has traveled just like them. But it is food made to last. Bread that keeps its shape. Cheese that does not spoil in the heat. and in this pause they feel the gentle kindness of a meal earned after a long road. In the heart of the Subura, where buildings lean too close and the streets run with the voices of children and vendors, a girl slips through the crowd carrying a small bronze coin. She is no older than 10, but she knows where to go. Past the tavern, past the well, to a man with a clay stove and a row of small metal pans. He greets her with a nod and drops a mixture into the pan: flour, honey, and poppy seeds. It sizzles. The air fills with the scent of warmth and sweetness. In a moment, he flips the small cake onto a scrap of fig leaf, folds it, and hands it to her. She smiles, gives him the coin, and runs off barefoot down the lane. This is a world where hunger is met not with abundance, but with ingenuity. A few ingredients, a quick hand, a little fire, and for one quiet moment, all is well. Beyond the Tiber, where the air smells of earth and smoke, the countryside feeds the city. Here, in the gentle hills, olive trees stretch their limbs across dry stone terraces. A farmer walks among them, hands stained green from the day's harvest. Oil presses squeak as olives are crushed beneath wooden beams. The thick, golden liquid runs into terracotta jars, amphorae, sealed with wax and straw. This oil will be poured into lamps and onto lentils, over fish and bread. It will make the simple rich, the bland alive. Nearby, in a small garden, rows of cabbage and beans grow in quiet order. A boy waters them with a tilted jug, watching his reflection ripple in the basin. He does not know where the food will go, perhaps to a market stall, perhaps to his own table, but he tends it, carefully, patiently, like all things that grow slowly. Back in the city, that oil and cabbage and bread come together in small homes and smoky kitchens. The countryside is not far. It lives in every bite, at the city's edge. Beside a stretch of dusty road, a man rests beside his cart. He is a merchant from the north, his accent foreign but familiar in a city of strangers. His wares are not cloth or coin, but smoked meats wrapped in waxed skin, dried apples strung in garlands, hard biscuits pocked with fennel. He shares with a soldier off duty and weary, leaning against a milestone. They do not speak much, just chew and nod. The food is dry but hearty, a traveller's fare, the sort that resists spoil, that endures the miles, the sort that has fed legions, merchants, pilgrims and outlaws alike. The sun lowers across the stones, shadows lengthen, and somewhere ahead, perhaps a day or two's walk, the next market waits. The baths are nearly empty now, but the heat still clings to the walls. A thin mist rises from the caldarium as a few men towel off, their skin flushed from the steam. Nearby, a small side room, the apoditarium, hums with quiet voices and the clink of coins exchanged. Outside, a vendor waits with a tray balanced on one shoulder. From beneath a cloth, he draws out soft boiled eggs still warm and a bowl of cumin salt for dipping. He carries small sausages, grilled earlier and wrapped in grape leaves, their scent still rich with garlic and fat. A jar of wine, diluted with spring water and cooled with snow from distant mountains, is poured into chipped cups and passed around. This food is not meant for indulgence. It is the kind of small, satisfying meal taken after sweat and strain, a reward for the clean skin and loosened limbs, a moment of rest in the middle of the city's rhythm. The vendor packs up what remains and walks into the night, his tray lighter, his pockets heavier. The theatre crowd spills into the street as the play ends. Laughter, applause, and shouted praise follow the actors as they retreat behind the curtain. Vendors swarm the exiting audience, eager to catch those still warmed by wine and story. One man pushes a cart stacked with clay bowls. Steam rises from the top as he ladles out chickpea porridge, thick, salty, and laced with bits of leek and garlic. Another vendor sells skewers of grilled dormice, stuffed with herbs and pine nuts, a rare treat for those with denarii to spare. Children beg for candied nuts. Young couples split pears roasted with honey and vinegar. Everywhere, the city is alive with flavor, not from feasts in villas, but from these simple, accessible joys handed out in alleys and beneath colonnades. For most, this is dinner. Hot, immediate, eaten with the fingers or a borrowed spoon, and once finished, the food becomes memory, and the night carries them home. The docks are still awake. Ships creak in the harbor, heavy with grain from Egypt, olives from Greece, and salted fish from every coast the empire touches. Crates are unloaded, marked, carried down ramps by slaves with rope-burned hands. Nearby, the dockside taverns prepare for another long night. Inside one, a brazier crackles. A pan of small fish fries in oil, their skins curling and snapping in the heat. A bowl of lentil paste sits on a wooden shelf beside a stack of flatbread, ready to be torn and dipped. Wine, thick and red, is poured without measurement. Fishermen drink beside sailors. Merchants argue over contracts. A lute plays from the back room, half out of tune. The tavern smells of salt and charcoal, wine and sweat. Food here is never refined, but it fills the stomach and binds the bones after long hours on the sea. And tomorrow, before the sun, the docks will stir again, and the taverns will start anew. A festival begins with dawn drums echoing through the forum. Garlands hang from doorposts, and the temples are crowded with offerings, bread shaped into animals, bowls of spiced grain, and honey cakes wrapped in fig leaves. Today is sacred, and food follows suit. At the temple steps, women hand out laibum, sweet cheesecakes baked with bay leaves, still warm from the hearth. Children chase each other with handfuls of nuts. A man dressed as Bacchus drinks heavily, and strangers are welcome at every blanket spread along the grass. Boiled eggs with saffron, pork roasted on skewers over open fire, figs stuffed with walnuts and dipped in wine, and all of it shared, no coin exchanged, no barter. For a few hours, Rome forgets its divisions. There are no clients or patrons here, no slaves or masters, just eaters laughing beneath a god's gaze. By sunset, the wine jugs are dry, and the city smells of herbs and smoke. Tomorrow will return to routine, but tonight, everyone eats like emperors. The lamps are lit one by one along the Via Appia, their faint glow reflecting on worn stones beneath the feet of travelers arriving late. A young couple, having walked from the countryside, stops at a small roadside taberna just beyond the city gates. It is quiet here, with only the rustle of leaves and the occasional murmur from other guests inside. The innkeeper offers what he has left: boiled eggs, black olives cured in oil, and yesterday's bread, toasted over the fire until crisp. A pot of barley gruel simmers near the hearth, seasoned with herbs and thickened with scraps of cheese rind. The couple sits near the warmth, grateful for the stillness. The inn smells of wood smoke, thyme, and sleep. Around them, others eat in silence, merchants with dust on their boots, a soldier cradling a bandaged hand, an old woman sipping watered wine. The food is not memorable, but the comfort is, and as the fire dwindles to embers, the day ends without flourish. Just the quiet satisfaction of hunger eased. Deep within the hills of Etruria, long before the bells of Rome could be heard, the traditions of cooking passed down like stories. Here, in the shade of olive groves, food was woven into the seasons. A woman crouches beside a pit oven. She removes a pot sealed with a dough crust. Inside, beans and lentils have cooked all afternoon with onions, vinegar, and wild herbs gathered that morning. The scent is strong and earthy, a memory of the soil itself. Nearby, her husband tends a small clay grill. A single fish caught from the stream is wrapped in fig leaves and smoked with rosemary. The meal will be modest, but it connects them to the land, to ancestors, and to each other. Long before Rome called itself eternal, these flavors fed the lives of shepherds and gatherers, and their rhythms still echo in quiet kitchens, far from the marble noise of empire. The legion marches through Gallic lands, mud thick on their sandals and wind heavy with rain. At night, the soldiers gather in a makeshift camp, their tents staked against the slope of a hill. Dinner comes from what they carry: dried grain, salted meat, a bit of oil if they're lucky. A soldier with a steady hand mixes pulse, barley porridge, with pieces of dried turnip and garlic. Another grinds a bit of black pepper, rare and hoarded. They crouch around the coals, warming their fingers and mouths. No table, no plates, just hands, knives, and the hunger of men who have walked too far. A flask of sour wine is passed around, chased with laughter and quiet curses. It is not comfort, but it is camaraderie. And in the cold, under foreign stars, that is enough to feel fed. The grain ships arrive at dawn, their hulls low in the water, heavy with wheat from Alexandria. Longshoremen offload the sacks with practiced rhythm, passing them to carts headed for the granaries. But not all of it is bound for storage. Nearby, on a quieter dock, a woman kneads dough with river water and a pinch of salt. She flattens it by hand, tosses it on a scorching tile set above hot coals, and in moments the flatbread bubbles and browns. A splash of oil, a smear of mashed lentils, and the bread becomes breakfast. Laborers line up with copper coins and empty hands. They eat standing, speaking little. This is food meant for speed, for function. And yet, in its simplicity, there is something beautiful. A thin, warm circle of bread that fills the stomach and begins the day. The sun burns high over the arena and the crowd roars like the sea. Below, in the shade beneath the stands, vendors slip through narrow spaces with baskets slung across their shoulders. The food they carry is not elegant, but it is hot and immediate, made for quick hands and distracted mouths. Roasted chickpeas, tossed with salt and crushed herbs, are scooped into palm leaves. Strips of dried sausage, chewy and spicy, are sold from twine loops. One vendor pours wine into clay cups, mixing it with honey and a touch of seawater to stretch the flavor. Another sells fried pastries, plain dough twisted and dropped into oil, then dusted with cumin and poppy seeds. A boy bites into a stuffed date, eyes fixed on the sands where two men circle each other, swords glinting, blood and food mingle in the air. It is not a place for quiet or grace, but still the food binds the crowd together. They cheer, they jeer, they eat, and for a moment they are one. Winter grips the city with wet stone and pale skies. Fires crackle in the corners of homes, and people wrap their cloaks tighter against the chill. Food in these months changes. It becomes heavier, warmer, slower. In a modest insular apartment, a woman stirs a pot over a brazier. It's a cabbage stew, thickened with barley and flavoured with bones saved from weeks past. She drops in leeks, carrots and a handful of mustard seeds. The aroma fills the room, pushing back the cold. Outside, street vendors adjust their menus. Breads are toasted over flame, smeared with garum and mustard paste. Small bowls of hot porridge are sold to children walking home from school. Dried. Fruits reappear. Figs, apricots, plums, softened in wine and spiced with cinnamon. Winter doesn't stop hunger. If anything, it sharpens it. But Rome has ways of softening the season, one steaming bowl at a time. Along the dusty back roads of the southern countryside, a group of slaves moves slowly through the olive groves, their hands blackened by the day's labor. The overseer is quiet today, and they are grateful. At dusk, they gather in a small stone hut, too tired to speak. From a cracked pot, one ladles out a meal. Millet porridge, rough and plain, stirred with oil and crushed garlic. There's a bowl of olives, bitter and wrinkled, and half a loaf of bread left from yesterday. They eat without ceremony, crouched on the dirt floor, leaning against the cold stone. One of them, a boy no older than 14, hums a tune his mother used to sing. No one tells him to stop. The food is meager, the hours long, but the tune softens the silence. Tomorrow will bring more olives, more sun, more aching backs, but tonight they have warmth and something to hold in their hands. The temple is quiet in the hour before dawn. A soft breeze passes through the marble columns, carrying with it the scent of incense and old stone. Within the sanctuary walls, the priests prepare for the day's rites, not with robes or scrolls, but with flour, honey, and oil. In the sacred kitchen, a young acolyte grinds barley into fine meal with a stone wheel. Another carefully shapes it into small loaves, libum, meant not for eating, but for the gods. These are rich with soft cheese and drizzled with honey, then pressed with laurel leaves before baking in clay ovens. Some of the bread is set aside for offerings. The rest is eaten in silence by the priests and helpers. The flavor is dense, sweet, perfumed by the bay leaf and fire. It is not ordinary food, it is food that has touched the divine. As the sun rises and prayers are spoken, the city outside stirs to life. But here in the temple, the first meal of the day has already been taken, sacred, simple, and shared. A funeral procession winds through the streets of Rome, slow and solemn. The mourners wear dark wool, their heads bowed, their steps measured. At the front, a flute player's melody wavers in the cool morning air, guiding them toward the family tomb. After the rites, after the weeping and the words, there is food. It is tradition, not only to honor the dead, but to feed the living, who must carry on. On a shaded terrace, the family gathers. Plates are filled with boiled eggs, lentils, and flatbread, symbols of rebirth and the earth's cycle. A fish, roasted whole, is set in the center of the table, flanked by bowls of figs and olives. Wine is poured, but not toasted. It is drunk quietly. An older woman tears off a piece of bread, dips it in oil, and eats with her eyes closed. The flavors are familiar, ancient, grounding. This is not a feast, but a remembrance. Through food, the dead remain part of the world, present in every bite and sip, as they once were in laughter and silence. Far from the patrician villas and public forums, in a crowded quarter of freedmen and artisans, a celebration is beginning. The boy of the household has come of age, and though the family is modest, the meal is anything but. Neighbors arrive with jars of lentil soup, wheels of cheese, bunches of grapes wrapped in leaves. Someone brings a roasted hare stuffed with herbs and pine nuts. Another carries honey cakes dusted with almond meal, their tops scorched just slightly from the fire. They eat seated on steps, stools, and crates, wherever there is space. Children laugh and chase each other with bits of bread. Old men play dice in the corner, drinking watered wine from shared cups. The smells, garlic, smoke, sweet must, mingle with the sound of stories retold and jokes passed down. There is no marble, no silver, no slaves in livery, but there is warmth, pride, and full stomachs. The boy smiles wide, tearing into his portion, the first of many such meals he will now be welcome to share as a man. Night settles gently over the rooftops of Rome. The heat of the day fades, and with it the crowded voices of the streets fall, quiet. But not everything sleeps. In the narrow alleys near the markets, where the stones still hold warmth, a lamplighter walks slowly with his torch, stopping at each post to tend the flame. Near the fountain, a man sets up his cart beneath a hanging lantern. He sells only two things: boiled lentils with coriander and cumin, and warm wine steeped with rosemary and orange peel. The pot of lentils bubbles gently over a small brazier, while the wine simmers in a blackened jug, its scent soft and sharp at once. One by one, night workers arrive: bakers, cleaners, mule drivers, thieves. They come in silence, coins in hand, seeking warmth. The food is plain, even bitter, but there's comfort in the ritual. A bowl, a swallow, a moment beneath the stars. As the lamps flicker and the moon brightens, the vendor nods to his last customer and begins to pack his cart. The brazier dies down. The night continues. In a poorer district of the city, the grain supply has faltered. The ships are late, the officials quiet, and the bellies of Rome grow louder. A mother stands in her small kitchen, staring at what remains: 2 onions, a handful of stale flour, and a splash of oil. She peels the onions and boils them slowly, hoping to coax flavor from their tired layers. The flour she mixes with water and salt, forming a thin dough that she presses flat and cooks over a dry pan. They are not loaves, just discs, blistered and dry, meant to carry the onions and fill the mouth. The children eat quickly, licking their fingers for the taste of oil. There is no garum, no cheese, no fruit. Just survival, shaped by hunger. Outside, neighbors trade stories and scraps. A man offers pickled turnips in exchange for half a jar of lentils. A woman soaks old bread in broth, making a soft mash to feed her sick husband. In these days, food is not joy, it is duty, but even then, it binds them together. Far from the crowded streets, behind the high walls of a senator's villa, a feast begins at sunset. The atrium glows with torchlight, and the floors gleam with mosaic scrubbed clean by unseen hands. In the kitchen, the heat is relentless. Slaves work shoulder to shoulder, each with a task. One bastes a roasted duck with honey and vinegar. Another layers a dish of minced meat, pine nuts, and pepper under a crust of pastry. A boy grinds peppercorns in a bronze mortar, sneezing with every breath. They will not taste the food. They will not sit. They move like shadows, silent and fast, carrying dishes to the triclinium, where their masters recline on couches draped with linen. There, guests drink wine perfumed with rose petals and eat oysters on silver trays. A girl stands behind a curtain, holding a bowl of dates. She watches as a senator bites into a fig soaked in wine and praises its sweetness. She has never tasted one. she is not permitted. In the kitchen she will eat later, what remains, what is dropped, what is cold. But it will still be better than the dry barley mash of yesterday. In this house, even the scraps are rich. By the 1st century CE, Rome had grown into a hungry metropolis of over 1 million people, a city that ran not only on politics and spectacle, but on food consumed quickly, cheaply, and often on the move. The fast food culture of ancient Rome wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity. Most urban dwellers, especially those living in cramped insulae, apartment blocks, lacked kitchens. Instead, they turned to the bustling streets where vendors offered a daily rhythm of sustenance. Thermopolia were at the heart of this world, a kind of ancient fast food diner. These small establishments, often located at street corners or along busy avenues, featured a counter embedded with large ceramic jars, dolia, that held hot food and drink. Patrons could stop by for a bowl of pulse, grain porridge, a hunk of bread soaked in garum, or a slice of roasted meat. Thermopolia often served working-class Romans and travelers, people who needed to eat but didn't have time or space to cook. Food was tailored to availability and speed. Early in the day, stalls might sell panis, bread, fresh from a communal bakery. By midday, vendors offered items like moritum, a garlicky cheese spread served with coarse bread. In the evening, foods turned heartier: cicer arietinum, roasted, chickpeas, lupini, lupin beans, soaked and salted, and fried tidbits like globuli, small fritters sweetened with honey and sprinkled with poppy or sesame seeds. Sweet treats were especially popular. Dulcia domestica, stuffed dates filled with nuts and dipped in honey, were a luxurious street-side dessert. Vendors might also sell libum, the sweet cheesecakes traditionally used in religious offerings, but enjoyed as portable snacks. Fried doughs flavored with honey, herbs, or cheese were common, making Roman junk food surprisingly decadent. Beverages accompanied the meals. Most wine was diluted with water and might be seasoned with honey, herbs, or even seawater. In poorer districts, people drank posca, a sharp, vinegary mix of sour wine and water, favored by soldiers and laborers. Seasonality and regional imports shaped what was available. In the winter, roasted chestnuts warmed cold hands, while in the summer, melon slices or chilled wine provided relief. The ports brought in delicacies like dried figs from Hispania, garum from coastal fisheries, and African grain for porridge and bread. These foods weren't just eaten, they were part of Rome's sensory identity. Walking through the Subura or past the Circus Maximus, the city would have smelled of charcoal, garlic, fish sauce, and frying oil. The soundscape included the rhythmic slap of dough, vendors shouting prices, and the hiss of meat over flame. Despite the empire's vast inequalities, street food was one of the few things shared across class lines. A senator might send his slave to fetch warm bread from the same bakery as a dock worker. A freedman could stand beside a craftsman at the Thermopolium counter, sipping the same mulled wine. In food, there was a rare moment of convergence. In the bustling port city of Ostia, Rome's maritime gateway, the rhythm of fast food took on a distinctly cosmopolitan flavor. Here, traders from every corner of the empire mingled with sailors, dockworkers, and freedmen, all looking for something quick and filling before returning to their business. The Thermopolia were especially dense along the main streets, often nestled into the base of apartment buildings. Some were modest, just a warm counter and a ladle, but others were adorned with painted walls and even seating niches. A sailor steps into one such shop near the Forum. The shopkeeper offers a ladleful of hot lentil stew laced with coriander and cumin. bread, still warm from the oven, is broken in half and rubbed with garlic. The sailor asks for something sweet, a fig, cake or a few nooses, nuts, roasted and dusted with salt. The transaction is fast, the food is greasy, satisfying and portable. He eats as he walks, wiping his hands on his tunic before disappearing into the alleys that lead back to the dock. Elsewhere in the empire, fast food evolved with local ingredients. In Alexandria, the Roman Egyptian capital, food vendors blended Roman street fare with native dishes. Chickpeas were mashed and fried into patties, an early echo of falafel, and sold with sour pomegranate molasses and flatbread. Fish was abundant and grilled whole, dressed in olive oil and coriander, served wrapped in reed leaves for ease. In Londinium, the northern edge of the Roman world, Roman fast food adapted to colder weather and Celtic grains. Thick oat porridge, meat pies sealed with layers of fat, and smoked fish on flat barley cakes made quick meals for Roman soldiers and local Britons alike. Garum was present, but local substitutes like fermented turnip sauce found their way into the mix. Back in Narcit, the Roman heartland, public festivals added a seasonal flair to street food culture. During the Saturnalia, vendors sold fried sweets shaped like stars or animals, flavored with cinnamon and honey, luxuries more affordable in festival quantities. Pop-up food carts offered skewers of grilled pork and chickpea pancakes, panis, fati, wrapped in fig leaves and sold hot to the crowds cheering at temporary games or street performances. Perhaps most remarkable was the communal nature of these meals. Eating on the street was not stigmatized, nor was fast food considered lesser, only practical. The Thermopolium was as much a meeting place as a dining one. Deals were made, gossip was exchanged, and politics were argued over bowls of pulse and cups of watered wine. Even as Rome's elite dined on 7-course meals with peacock tongues and sea urchin sauce, the true engine of the empire ate differently, quickly, cheaply, standing up and moving on. Let's step deeper into the world of ancient Roman fast food, not just its ingredients or locations, but the full human ecosystem that fed the empire on its feet. The culture, the people, the sounds and smells of a city, fed by hand, bowl and hot pot. A typical Thermopolium was modest in scale, just 1 or 2 rooms open to the street. The front counter, usually made of stone, held sunken dolia, large storage jars, lined with lead or clay. These jars were not for storing dry goods, but for keeping prepared foods warm or room temperature. Behind the counter, a brazier or small oven kept things hot, often with clay pots, simmering lentils, stews or spiced wine. It was both kitchen and point of sale. The food was dished directly from dolia into simple ceramic bowls or scooped into flatbread. Customers might stand while eating or sit on nearby steps, crates, or if the shop had them, benches lining the walls. Prices varied. The simplest meal: a bowl of pulse, grain porridge, a piece of panis, and perhaps a scoop of cooked beans could cost just a few quadrantes, small bronze coins. Higher-end Thermopolia offered spiced sausages, grilled fish, or even stuffed dormice if clientele demanded more exotic fare. Food was tiered to your station, but even the poorest might afford something warm and savory by day's end. And who were the vendors? Often freedmen or immigrants from the provinces, Greeks, Syrians, North Africans, bringing their regional spice blends and cooking methods. In Pompeii, frescoes on the walls of Thermopolia depicted not only food and drink, but Dionysian revelry and exotic animals, marketing tools, but also expressions of the cultural fusion on offer. Some vendors became local celebrities. A sausage seller who worked near the Forum might have regulars from nearby legal offices. A wine and honey stand near the Subura could be known for a particular mix of herbs. These weren't just food sellers, they were part of the daily rhythm. Like newsboys or barbers, the smells were unmistakable. Fried onions, fish sauce, garum, charred bread, and hot oil. Rome was alive with odours, and food was at its heart. A pot of beans cooked with lovage and pork rind might smell earthy and
sour.
Bread baked with cheese and garlic could be sharp and sweet. Spiced wine with myrrh and cloves, almost medicinal. Thermopolia weren't the only source of fast food. Street vendors, corponi, wandered with trays or carts. They sold roasted chickpeas or broad beans, still hot in cloth sacks. Boiled eggs with a pinch of salt and pepper, often carried in baskets. Meat skewers or sausages, grilled on coals and served with vinegar sauce. Fried fish bites, dredged in flour and tossed. In garlic oil honey-glazed pastries. Like satura, a crumbly cake eaten with figs. Children were especially fond of the sweet treats. Dulcia made from honey and nuts, or dried fruit sold from cone-shaped wrappings of papyrus or old waxed notes. And there was more than food. There was theatre. Many vendors had sharp tongues, sang their prices, joked with clients, or competed loudly with one another. The noise of the street was punctuated by calls of warm bread, chickpeas with pepper, hot sausage, better than your mother's. Fast food fed the people, yes, but it also reinforced the pulse of Rome itself.